So I spent this week reading this gospel passage and its companion passages in the other gospels again and again, looking for the similarities and the differences and trying to find that one little nugget that stood out, that one little thing that kind of brought them together or broke them apart that had some meaning. And what I found was a lot of messiness and chaos. Did you know that it is only the Gospel of John that mentions palm branches? We call it Palm Sunday. We wave palm branches around. There are palm branches on the altar. In the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, they mention trees, tree branches, tree leaves. And there is no foliage at all in the Gospel of Luke that we read today. One gospel, whole Sunday, Palm Sunday. And then there is the shouting. In three of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and John, the crowd shouts, "Hosanna." But in Luke's Gospel, it is the disciples who are shouting, and they shout, "Peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven." And apparently, the disciples themselves were loud enough to cause the Pharisees some anxiety because it's only in the Gospel of Luke that the Pharisees want them to be quiet. And it continues. In three of the Gospels, Jesus is riding on a colt, but in John's Gospel, he is on a donkey. Luke and John call Jesus a king, but Matthew and Mark reference Jesus as the son of David. The similarities and the differences in these passages don't follow any kind of pattern, and there is not one story that is unique enough to be really different. So I thought, okay, I'll go see what the scholars have to say about this. Because certainly that's going to, really bring it all together, but not exactly. Did Jesus ride into Jerusalem on an animal? Was it a colt? Was it a donkey? Maybe. He probably rode on something, because that was the thing that people did. Did it have anything to do with a prophecy, like a couple of the stories reference? Probably not. Were the gospel writers trying to set Jesus up to look like a king? Maybe. But kings didn't usually ride on donkeys, and they certainly didn't ride into the city before they destroyed it. That was usually what they did after. But were the stories trying to point out that a Jesus is a different kind of king? Maybe. In my ongoing research for what makes meaning out of this passage, for some commonality or some difference that would stand out, I just kept encountering more messiness and chaos. And so I thought, well, maybe I can make some order out of this chaos. Maybe I can bring this all together so that I can give you something really solid to hold on to about this triumphant entry into Jerusalem. But then I realized that I couldn't really do that either. And then it dawned on me that maybe right now I'm seeing chaos in these stories because I am feeling the chaos that is happening around us. And then maybe what I need to do this week as we head into Holy Week is to lean into the chaos. The world is chaotic. It's not totally chaos all the time. There are natural rhythms and orders to the world. The way we breathe in and breathe out. The thump, the thump, the thump of our heartbeats. The seasons always come in the same order: winter, spring, summer, and fall. We might only get 2 weeks of fall, but we do get fall. But it's not totally predictable, and it's not always safe. The seasons bring destruction and blizzards and tornadoes and floods, fires. We don't even need a season to have an earthquake. Our lives, life and death, it's not predictable. Some people get to live long, simple lives and die at a ripe old age. Others we don't even get to see take a breath before they leave us. And all the folks who leave us somewhere in between, when we know it's far too early for us to let them go. Our next breath is never guaranteed. It's almost as if chaos is built into the system. So much that happens is out of our control. And we are left to just manage the outcomes. But we don't have to do it alone. Because if I know anything to be true about God, I know that God brings order from chaos. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. The universe started in chaos. And God said, "Let there be light." And then God separated the light from the dark, which means that the light and the dark were coexisting. What does that look like for light and dark to be coexisting, that they have to be separated? And then God separated the waters to form the dome of the sky, and God put the stars in the dome of the sky. And God collected the waters on the earth to make dry land appear. Order is forming out of chaos. And then God sets the cycle of the day and the night into motion. From the very beginning, God brought order from the chaos. And then there is Jesus. As I said earlier, one scholar noted that kings ride into town after a military victory. Kings show up after their military has caused chaos and destruction, after the violence. Kings and tyrants and dictators sow chaos because people living in chaos cannot organize and revolt. People living in chaos are just striving to stay alive day after day. Sometimes leaders create chaos so that they can come in and then pretend to fix it. We've all seen that. But Jesus rides into town to bring peace. He doesn't come to sow chaos. He comes to sow peace. And it's what he's done his whole life. For his whole life, Jesus has brought order from chaos. Jesus has taken the outcast and brought them back into their communities. Jesus has cast demons out of people's bodies and minds to make them whole and at peace again. Jesus brought sight to the blind. He made the deaf man hear. He asked the man who was lame to pick up his mat and walk home. Jesus calmed the raging storm, and he raised Lazarus from the dead. Time and time again, Jesus has brought order to that which was disorder. He has brought wholeness to what was broken. Jesus sows peace. Sometimes we wonder if God is the source of chaos. If God creates the chaos in the world, if God creates the chaos in our lives. Certainly people will tell us that's the case. There are televangelists every time there's a hurricane who tell us that it is humanity's ills that have caused God to punish us. We have friends and even pastors who will tell us that the tragedies that happen to us are somehow God's wrath against us. Or even worse, that God is trying to teach us something. Maybe the worst piece of theology that exists in the world is that everything happens for a reason. None of that is true. None of that is true. Our God is not chaotic. Our God does not do bad things to us. Our God brings order from the chaos. Our God set in motion a world that is good, that was intended to be good for all created things. Somehow chaos persists. Somehow humans bend towards chaos. And as Jesus enters Jerusalem on whatever he might have been writing, he is heading straight for the chaos. To be arrested, to be beaten, to be denied and deserted by his friends, to be taunted as he hangs and dies on a cross. Then, my friends, there is resurrection. This is the hope and the promise of the resurrection, that new life is possible, that order can be made from the chaos. That no matter what tragedy or destruction or devastation that happens to us or in us or around us, that there is always a possibility for redemption. There is always a possibility for new life. And we do that with God walking beside us. With a God who has lived the chaos and the tragedy and the grief. With a God who from the very beginning brought order from the chaos. Amen.